everybody, and a happy Saturday to you, or whatever day it is for you. It's Saturday for me. This week has been super exciting and full of news and information, and you know me, I love new stuff. We've got new video cards coming out from AMD, there's info on new iPhones, the new Samsung phones are coming out, but the thing that I want to actually talk about today in this video is going to be the leaks on the new Canon Mirrorless full-frame EOS RP. So if you've watched a lot of my videos before, you know that I shoot with Canon cameras. I'm actually shooting this right now on a Canon 6D Mark II. That is my daily shooter. I also shoot with a 7D Mark I, and I still shoot with an EOS Rebel 450D that I bought in 2008. Their first full-frame mirrorless camera, which I did a whole video about. I'll go ahead and link up here. And while that camera seems to be doing relatively well in terms of sales, for me, from a spec to price ratio, and I think a lot of you, considering the comments that I got on some of those videos, that folks seemed a little underwhelmed. Now, the EOS R was obviously the Canon 5D Mark IV sensor jammed into a smaller mirrorless body. I know that there were a lot of things missing in that camera that people wanted. And while a lot of people are looking to compare that camera to the maybe Nikon Z6 or the Sony A7R, it was a little overpriced for that. But I personally think that Canon is actually looking more to line things up within their own lineup as opposed to competing against other people's lineups. Now, that might not be the best strategy for them from a marketing perspective, but I think they look at the fact that there's a huge amount of EF lenses out in the market, and that's really the folks that they're going for. But we can discuss that in the comments. So let's hop into talking about this new camera. So first things first, let's talk about the size of this thing. I think a lot of people were a little disappointed in the EOS R, or at least it seems people were split on the EOS R in the fact that some people really liked the fact that it was a little larger and felt a little bit more like a substantial camera in the hand. But there are also folks that were really looking for a much lighter piece of kit. Now, it's nowhere near as heavy as, say, the 1DX Mark II, but it's not maybe as light as some of the other offerings in the mirrorless world. So it seems like one of the things that Canon has potentially achieved with this new camera is a much lighter body. So coming in at 5.2 inches by 3.3 inches by 2.8 inches, this is a considerably smaller camera in comparison to the EOS R. It also only weighs a pound. It's just a little bit over a pound at 1.07 pounds compared to the EOS R, which is almost 1.5 pounds. So that's a pretty significant drop. You will notice that when you're throwing a lens on there, especially if you've got a lighter lens like a pancake. I would say even with that adapter, you're still going to notice that this is a much lighter and smaller lens. Now, with that, they had to ditch a couple things. Specifically, there is no touch bar at the top. That was one of the things that had come out with the EOS R, so that is gone. I know some people love that. Some people thought that it was a little fiddly, and it was difficult to get to because of, you know, just kind of where you're going to end up putting your face when you put the camera up to your eye to shoot through the EVF. Now, if you're shooting through the screen, I could see that that would be definitely an easier thing to manage, but that has been completely ditched. It also looks like, from some of the leaked photos, that the EVF has been placed a little lower on the camera, so it's just everything has just been shrunk down. Also, this camera does not have a joystick on it for selecting your EF points, so you're going to be using the screen while you're doing that to select your points. They're definitely going with that screen control. I think that's the direction that they're going to be going with that, moving forward with these smaller bodies. So from a size perspective, this is definitely that smaller form factor of a camera, though still full frame, which is really great. It's definitely smaller, it's definitely lighter. I think it's going to really be marketed at those folks that are looking for the smallest, lightest piece of gear to take with them. Although their RF lenses are gigantic. RF lenses are just beasts. So, I mean, I guess you want to save as much weight as you can on the camera body. Okay, so let's talk about the sensor in this thing. So, like I said before, the EOS R took the 5D Mark IV sensor and put it in the mirrorless body. It was the exact sensor. They did improve just a little bit of the capabilities by pairing it with a new chip. Like they've done the same thing, but instead of pulling it from the 5D Mark IV, they're pulling it from the 6D Mark II, which is the camera that I'm using right now. Now, the 6D Mark II has the Digic 7 processor in it, and the EOS R has the Digic 8. So it's almost like they took the chip out of the EOS R and the sensor out of the 6D Mark II, and they've put them together. Now, that should hopefully enable a couple of things. The 6D Mark II, painfully, does not shoot in 4K at all. It does have a 4K time-lapse mode, but really it's just internally stitching stills together in that mode. So really what we're talking about is that in video mode, no matter what, this camera does not shoot in 4K. It also only shoots in IPB, which is a higher compression mode. You don't get that lower compressed frame mode, so you've only got so much bit rate to deal with on the 6D Mark II with the Digic 7. So the EOS R, which has again the 5D Mark IV sensor paired with the Digic 8, has the ability to shoot in 4K, though with a pretty considerable crop. And the 6D Mark II does not with the Digic 7. The other camera that has the Digic 8 is the M50, which also shoots in 4K. So I think we can pretty safely say that there's no reason why this camera shouldn't shoot at 4K, though it will most likely have a crop. Now, because of the fact that this is a smaller sensor, maybe it won't be as big a crop as what you have on the EOS R, considering how much of the pixels it's going to have to try and cut out of that sensor to be able to deal with. Now, I know a lot of people get upset with the crop and the fact that Sony cameras can do it without a crop, and that the new Panasonic cameras can do it without a crop at about these same price points. And that, it sounds like a technological issue, honestly. If you remember back to the Sony, was it the a6000 or the a6300? I think it was the a6300, shot 4K, but it would overheat right away. Maybe it was the a6500. Tell me in the comments. But that camera would overheat all the time because the processor just couldn't handle the amount of information coming in. And I think Canon is probably being super cautious about this, and maybe it's a little bit of both. They're being super cautious on one hand, but they're also trying to compress the market a little bit so that they can get the most bang for their buck in terms of marketing and sales. They don't want to give everybody the best for the lowest price, which I know people get upset about, but that is a legitimate way to do business, especially when you have millions and millions of lenses out there that people are wanting to use with these new cameras. So now it shoots at 5 frames a second, which seems really low, considering the fact that my 6D Mark II with the Digic 7 can shoot at like 6.5, almost 7 frames a second. Now, the other thing is that when the Canon EOS R was tested, it's not really shooting at the 9 frames that it's advertising either. It's going to be a little slower. So 5 frames a second, you're probably only going to get 3 or 4 in continuous AF. And we don't know about tracking, we don't know about blackout and the EVF, you know, there's a lot of things that we still don't know. So those are things we're gonna have to learn. But there's definitely some compromises happening here, and I don't know if those are technological compromises or if those are inflicted as a result of marketing. Trying to position this camera correctly in their lineup. ISO range is the same as the 6D Mark II, 100 to 40,000, expandable I think to 102,000. Again, exactly like the 6D Mark II sensor, 26 megapixels. So really, we're looking at the same sensor out of the 6D Mark II, jammed into this mirrorless body and paired with the Digic 8 processor. One thing that was included in the leak that we don't really know a lot about is the discussion of AF. Now, of course, it's going to have the dual pixel AF that comes on almost modern Canon cameras like my 6D Mark II or the EOS R, but there was mention in the documentation about IAF. So if that's the case, if they've upgraded dual pixel AF to include IAF, maybe that's a firmware upgrade that we'll be getting, kind of like what Sony just did with their cameras. Maybe it's just specific to this camera. Although honestly, if I just bought an EOS R and the RP comes out and it has IAF and the EOS R never gets it, I would be so pissed. I'm fine if it never comes to my camera. My camera is over 1.5 years old, and that's okay. I was happy with the price that I paid. If I had just dropped $2,500 for the EOS R plus another couple $100 on the adapter, and then they come out with this thing and it has IAF and my camera never gets it as a firmware upgrade, that's gonna burn a lot of people. So let's just hope that they're gonna do that. That's of course assuming that it's gonna have IAF at all. That information may be incorrect, we don't know. We do know that it will have, interestingly enough, a flip out screen. Nothing about a swiveling screen, but a flip out screen, right? So my screen, you know, it flips. I can turn it and then I can swivel it, which is really nice, especially if I've got the camera up high or if I've got it kind of down low. When I went to Antelope Canyon, that was super helpful because I had this thing in all kinds of crazy positions and I had to be able to actually look and see what I was shooting. So that was really helpful to be able to have that. I can say that flip out is better than nothing. Flip out and swivel is better. It's really nice. So I'm glad that they're continuing with that. They are the best at that. I think Sony and Nikon still need to get there with their screens and understand what people are looking for. The other thing that we know for sure is the battery. So if you shoot with Canon cameras, you know that unless you shoot with the 1DX Mark II, this is your battery, right? This is the battery that I have tons of these. And I love that I can use this in both of my larger cameras. So I can shoot with this in the 6D, I can shoot with this in the 7D, and if I ever got a 5D, I know that I can throw this in there. The battery in this new one, and I'm guessing they're doing this to save weight, is the same from the M50, the little tiny one, which I think is about the same as what I have in my 450D. I appreciate that for the weight and size constraints, and maybe they just didn't have a choice. That's gonna definitely limit how much you can do with this camera out in the field. Maybe that doesn't matter to some of you. It matters to me because honestly, I am swapping out batteries all the time. And I need a battery that's gonna last me. Things we don't know what kind of ports it's gonna have. I'm sure it's gonna be an SD UHS 2 port. I seriously doubt that they would use a UHS 1 port. That would really kind of be sad. So we don't know about that, and I don't think we know about wireless technology. We don't know if it's gonna have the Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, GPS bundle in it. We don't know if it's gonna have a headphone jack, although the 6D Mark II does not, and so I would assume it's not going to. We don't know if it's gonna have any kind of an HDMI out. We don't know what the HDMI out might look like in terms of, you know, is it gonna be clean? What kind of compression is it gonna use? What kind of options will we have for that? One of the most frustrating parts about the 6D Mark II is that it does not have a clean HDMI out. And last but not least, the price. So from what I understand so far, this thing is slated to be somewhere between the $1,300 to $1,500. I've seen $1,499 in a couple of places, so I'm gonna stick with that. At $1,499, it undercuts the Z6 and the A7R III, as well as the new Lumix camera that just came out from Panasonic, the S1, and puts it right in there where we were kind of expecting a 7D Mark III to land. Definitely I can see this now as the new kind of entry-level full-frame, mirrorless or not, that Canon plans to sell, pretty much replacing the 6D Mark II, both in price point and in features. Because the EOS R didn't really replace the 5D Mark IV, it kind of created a kind of a middle ground, you know, below the 5D Mark IV, but in the full frame range being mirrorless. So for those folks looking for an entry-level, kind of low-end, mirrorless full-frame camera, I think this is it for you. I don't think we're gonna get anything lower than this because really there's not a whole lot more that they can pull out of this camera and still keep it functional and competitive and lower the price. So at $1,500, at $1,499, which is where I think this camera is gonna end up, I think that's what you're gonna see. Now that doesn't mean that they might still come out or might not still come out with an APS-C mirrorless somewhere between, you know, the M50, M6 line and this camera in the, you know, $899, $1,000, $1,100, $1,200 range. Maybe we will see a mirrorless 7D Mark III. Although I think the next mirrorless we're going to see is going to be that higher end model, that super high res model, to replace the 5DR, and the 5DR S. I really do think that that's what we're going to see first before we see any APS-C cameras. They've got a lot of those cameras out there. The SL1 is doing, or the SL2 is doing really well. The 80D might get an upgrade with the 70D. Check out my video on the Canon lineup. Tell me what you think. So in the comments, here's what I want to hear from everybody. Number one, okay, I have two questions for you that I need you to tell me what you think, and I would love to see some discussion on this. Number one, what mirrorless do you want to see next? Do you want them to go down into the APS-C with lower pricing, or do you want to go up and see maybe a landscape shooter with super high resolution, that 100 megapixel mirrorless that we've been hearing about? And secondly, yes or no, is this a camera that you see being an upgrade path for you? This camera squarely splits between my current camera and the EOS R, in that it has a few additional features, especially if it's going to shoot 4K, but is missing a couple things that I like and that I would have to get the EOS R if I wanted to pick up. Now, I'm not in the market for a new body at the moment. I'm loving the 6D Mark II. I'm honestly learning new things every day as I continue to shoot with it, but I would love to hear if this is a direction that you're going to be going. Thank you so much for watching. I want to welcome everybody to my channel who is new. I'm about to crack 2,000 subscribers. It has been a super crazy and busy year so far, and we're only a little over a month in. So thank you so much. If you are not already subscribed to my channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Go ahead and like this video. That helps YouTube know that this is the kind of stuff that people are into. And go ahead and, like I said, tell me in the comments if you're looking to pick this camera up and what you want to see next from Canon. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next video.